Great. So, Aaron, should we start?
Let's get going. Yeah.
Sorry we're a couple minutes late. We're actually streaming this live on YouTube Live, so it took a couple minutes for me to get that set up. Welcome, everybody, to it's actually the second time we've done this, a PR and marketing briefing that Tearsheet's putting on for our audience. We did this.
Great. So, Aaron, should we start? Let's
Uh,
get going.
Hold
Yeah.
on. This is the.
Sorry, we're a couple minutes.
Oh boy, one sec. Yeah. So I mean, this we did this the first time in January, right?
That's right. Yeah, it was great. We got great feedback and excited that we're doing it again.
Yeah, we had hundreds of people join the first time, and I know we've had hundreds of people watch the video from the first time. We invited the marketing and PR community to a webinar just for you guys in order to talk about what we're doing editorially and to talk about our programs. I think one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I got after our first one was like, wow, every media company should do this. This is really for you guys. This is really an opportunity for you to see how we work. We provide some insight into both our earned and paid opportunities, and it's up to you guys if you want to work with us. But we at least we're going to lay it out and tell you and spill the beans and open up the curtain really to show you how the sausage is made. If I didn't mix too many metaphors there.
We get out the sausage grinder.
Exactly. So, what are we going to talk about tonight? We're going to talk about an introduction to Tearsheet. I know I've seen many of the people that signed up. We have a few hundred people signed up for this event as well. Many of you we know. Many of you are familiar either with the editorial team or working with Aaron and our studios team. But we're going to talk to you about our editorial focus because everything starts there with Tearsheet. Everything starts with our coverage of the space, our perspective on the markets. And from there, we can talk about different ways to work with Tearsheet. We talk about our H2 2021 event and program calendar. So for the past year, we've been doing virtual events. And now we're going, hopefully, to in person. And this is a big deal because I think this is one of the best ways to interact with Tearsheet and our content and with our community. And so we're going to talk to you about those conferences that we have coming up the rest of the year. And then we're going to end up with some tips and guidance on how best to work with us. I'll talk about how to work with our reporters and our editorial team. Aaron will share some of the opportunities we have to work with us in programming and our content studio. We're creating some incredible content for some of the biggest brands in finance and fintech. We'll talk to you about how that works. So, Aaron, you have anything to add here, or should we keep pushing on?
Let's jump right in. This is great.
About Tearsheet, this was important as Aaron and I were preparing for this webinar. Aaron and I go back many years. We worked together at Seeking Alpha, and it's interesting. Even though Aaron joined last year, he's really been part of Tearsheet almost because we're friends and colleagues. He's been along for the ride almost the whole time, and so. But what was interesting was our perspective on the genesis story of Tearsheet. I know when we do podcasts, one of the first questions, one of the most important questions I like is the genesis story. And I know other podcast hosts and editors don't necessarily like that genesis story question. It might be trite or it might, I think it's really important because I think more than anything, it gives the story of the entrepreneur and the problem that they're trying to solve. And most of the time when we go to that, we ask that question, there's a very personal problem that they're trying to solve, which I think is the most interesting. So what about Tearsheet makes us Tearsheet? The idea was really born with the idea that we could be this Tearsheet. For those of you old enough to have started working in the 90s, maybe before that even, brokers during that time had something called a Tearsheet. And what was that? It was like a fax. It was a fax that came off on the that continuous paper that they had, and you ripped it off the fax machine, and that was what you needed to know for the day. And 15 years ago, when I started working on Tearsheet and started some of our first podcasts and newsletters, it really was that I was intending, like, with this confluence and the convergence of technology and finance, what do you need to know today to do your job? And it was always through the lens and the perspective of the financial industry. And this is our readership today, just a smattering. We're read primarily in the U.S. is 70% of our readership. The rest of our readership is spread out throughout the world. But the idea is, like, you come in, you're the head of product, you're the head of marketing, you're a VP of of digital at a large bank. What do you need to know today to get your job done? And so it's always through the lens, and we train our journalists to say, there's so many stories out there about tech disrupting, about tech changing things, right? Like it's always through the perspective that we take through the lens of what the incumbent actually is saying. So like, first of all, there's intellectual honesty there. Is tech really disrupting? And for the most part, it may be. I don't want to take one side or the other, but it's taking a really long time in finance. So we don't use that word disruption. We talk about sort of the ongoing unfolding of what this means. Finance is very slow to change, and so our stories, though, are told through the lens of the people who are helping to make them. And if you're running digital at a large bank, that's not an overnight fix. None of this is an overnight fix. And so our perspective on covering the market always comes through that. We do that in different channels. We have podcasts, we have newsletters, we have our daily reporting on the website. We have tons of stuff going on. And so through multi-channel and multimedia storytelling, we really feel like we're telling narrative stories about what that impact looks like. We're helping to define the industry, and we're helping to tell the most important stories, the case studies, how is this company, how is this bank, how is this credit union addressing these challenges? What tools did they use? How did they make those decisions internally? What team members were doing it? Did they get help inside or outside of the company to do that? And so those are the stories that we're trying to tell. We really see ourselves as storytellers. We're not champions or cheerleaders of the fintech industry, though we're fans of it. The way our perspective in telling the stories is always from a dispassionate point of view. We're not TechCrunch. We don't believe that every time a company raises $1 million, it's going to disrupt JP Morgan Chase. The chances that happens are quite low. So we're telling it from the perspective of the industry participants. And I think some of the people who I know who read us and appreciate the most, that's one of the pieces of feedback that we get most frequently. It's like, you guys get it. You're using the same language. You're talking about the same problems that we know. We feel like you're in the industry with us. That's actually the language that they use. And honestly, Aaron and I have been in the industry. And so we know some of these challenges, and that, whether that means we're working with you as a client in our content studio, creating content for a marketing campaign that you're doing, or we're writing about you organically and through earned media, it's still the same perspective. We get it. We understand it. And I think that's really important. Aaron, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And I think that, looking at our readership, and I just love these logos. And like, I wish that we could fit all the logos on here. And the reach that we have, the types of companies that are interested in us. Like, I think that a lot of times, like our focus is like we focused a lot on the industry leaders, whether it's the traditional players in the market or the new and upcoming ones. And just like when I was looking at that last slide, not only are they our readers, and this slide, not only do they come and ask us if they could be on the podcast, and you could talk more about that. But a lot of times they come to us and say, hey, can we also, we would like to engage with you as sponsors. So on that last slide, we had Plaid, PNC, Visa, or some of the few of the many brands that come to us and want to engage with us, not only, on the podcast or in our events, but also to reach out to our audience directly through a sponsorship.
That's a really important point. And so I think when you think of who our sponsors are, who our readers are, who our guests are on the podcast, it's a lot of the same people. And I think that's a testament to the type of community and audience that we're building. I think what's interesting here is, we are talking to some of the top people in the industry. We're not relegated to just the top people in the industry. It's through this lens again of the FIs, of the people making decisions in their companies, that we're helping to tell the stories for the whole industry. So even though, we might have a Harpreet Talwar who, previous, CEO of Marcus by Goldman, his perspective also lends credence and helps to tell the story of a product line manager in the same company or in one of their partners. And so we're not relegated to the upper echelon necessarily, but this is a smattering of the types of people that we have on the podcast. Audience data. Aaron, you want to talk a little bit about this? I think one thing I want to preface what you're going to say, Aaron, is just that It's the same story, right? So even though we are reaching the C-level executives within the company, there's very few of the top fintechs, very few of the top FIs that don't have senior members subscribe to Tearsheet in one way or another. But it doesn't have to be that. Meaning, it's from their perspective. It's also, we're talking about VPs and people actually doing the work, and not necessarily making decisions in the boardroom. But it's an influential audience. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
and we do focus a lot of most of our efforts and content on financial services, so it makes sense that that would be the biggest bulk of our readership, and fintechs, right? And I think that there's this kind of the lines blur between those two.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of fintechs like Square. Is Square a fintech, or is it like a financial service firm, or Stripe?
Right. Right.
And there's a lot of companies, Marqeta, and there's a lot of companies that are getting into that kind of interesting space. I think that pretty much the who's who of the venture capitalists that are interested in this space read us. It's a small, but like everyone that needs to be here is here. Of course, the consultants, like, so some of them are sponsors as well. Like, for example, they're doing project work, like Publicis Sapient. They're a great partner of ours, but also Deloitte's and Accenture's and small and large consultants of all kinds. Mm-hmm. And then, media, like whether it's like mainstream media, like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and and their business and financial beats, or it's some of the other, the smaller, newsletters that are out there that are covering fintech, that are trying to understand it. Some of our competitors, American Banker, some of those folks subscribe to us as well, and we look at what everyone else is doing as well. But I think that, like, when they look at us, there's something in our coverage, that the coverage of the editorial team, that is different, and I think that you can talk about that more in depth. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the roles that of the people, and why these roles are reading us.
Sorry, it's behind my screen. 1 second.
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah. So again, I think when you see the roles, it also is sort of it mirrors our coverage, right? What we write about and who reads it are intricately connected. So we don't do hardcore coverage of core banking software. We're not getting into the guts of a new ledger that was developed. We're not getting into at the protocol level of certain data sharing agreements or open banking platforms. But we're really talking about it from a perspective of, yes, we know we're talking about the software, we're talking about the vendors who are involved here, but it's really at the level of, like, the business level. So I think when you look at who's reading us, we definitely have senior technologists that are making strategic decisions for their companies, and product managers that are doing as well. But it's also product, and it's marketing, it's sales, it's business development, it's the people on the front lines of their business. That's what we're really writing about. We're writing because our coverage of the space typically focuses not on swapping out a core, as I said, a core banking software package. It's more at the distribution level, at the sales level, about where products meet the people who are actually using them, that our coverage generally focuses on. And so it's the people that would like to read about that who are actually is our core readership. I think that's a good point. Moving right along, maybe it's time to get into editorial calendar. This was a slide that we showed in January. We do publish our editorial calendar. What's important here, and we'll get into our events as we make it through the course of this conversation, but our editorial calendar syncs really with our conferences. And I think one of the things that when Aaron joined the company in the beginning of last year, one of the major impactful things that he did initially was say, well, we've got our organic content, we've got our content studio, and we've got these amazing events that we do. We do 4 events every year. This year it'll be 5. Why don't we weave them together so that they reinforce one another, right? Which sounds like a no-brainer, of course, when you say it, but it's just not the way we did things before. So if we're going to be doing an event called Challenger, which is our digital banking event, flagship event, that month we're going to be talking about Challenger banking and digital banking. And so that means whether there's more organic opportunities and more sponsorship opportunities, because all the eyeballs and all the focuses are on those topics. It doesn't mean we don't write about other things during that month, but there's definitely a focus on getting through on that. So this is the first half, and we just finished up June, which was about data. We had our day-to-day conference, which is one of our core pillar conferences, which is about data aggregation, data sharing, the data ecosystems growing up around financial institutions and fintech, sharing data back and forth bidirectionally, and alternative data. And now we're publishing the H2 2021 content calendar. Sorry, I just need to look here. Diversity in financial services is the name of the game. So I think this is also an important thing. We not only write about partnerships, strategy, new product launches, we also talk about the impact that technology is having on culture within the banks and within fintech. Fintech may be disrupting, if we use that word, or maybe upping the competitive volume in the industry. But what it's also doing is saying if you're competing over the same employees, it also says to a big bank, maybe the tie and suit is a little outdated for this audience. Maybe all old white guys in a boardroom is outdated and doesn't represent your stakeholders. And so we're also doing a better job, I think, and you'll see more of this year, covering the nature of what it's like to work in these organizations. We have a content series called A Day in the Life, which really looks at an executive and goes through her day. Like what are they eating in the morning? What other challenges do they have in terms of balancing their workload with their personal life? How do they conduct meetings? How do they interact with the direct reports? All these types of things, which really are a porthole into really seeing the challenges that you and I know that we all have within this industry. September to October this year, we're launching in concert with Publicis Sapient our first conference called Convergence. This will be the inaugural version of Convergence. And so this is the idea that one way or another, everybody, whether you're on the fintech side or on the financial services side, there's a movement now to provide more services and products that service more and more of your clients' needs. So if you're a SoFi and you started with refinancing student loans, the SoFi of today, which just went public, looks very different from when it started a few years ago. And it looks to me like a bank, right? It has banking services, it has investment services, it has crypto, has other types of loans. So the idea is that even in this expansion of products, as banks and fintechs went from sort of unbundling to rebundling the bank so that you're offering multiple lines of services and products to your customers, everybody's beginning to look similar, right? So SoFi's roots are in a refi of student lending, but now they come to banking, but they come to banking with that core, right? And so, which is different than a TransferWise. That's also, to me, it looks like very much like a modern bank, but its roots are in international money transfers. All these banks and financial institutions are converging to just try to own the biggest share of wallet of people out there. So of customers and stuff like that. So that's the convergence that we're talking about. We have, I think today we had an internal meeting. We're almost fully booked in terms of our agenda there. There might be one slot left if somebody wants to put forward a speaker. So we're definitely interested in that. Challenger Banks, as I mentioned before, will be our next conference in September. In October. We'll get deeper into the conferences later, but I think our coverage of Challenger Banks has differentiated Tearsheet versus some of the other players out there. I think we were very early to understand this move in challenger banks, these light banks. They're not actually technically banks, most of them, but we're seeing them niche down to become really, really good at servicing specific communities and demographics. And we're continuing to cover that, whether it's the LGBTQ community or people of color. Like, there are banks and financial services companies that are getting much better at servicing their specific needs. November and December, November we'll be having our embedded conference, which it'll be the third time that we do this. So we were actually very early in sort of this move to embedded finance. It is a major, and part of the reason I'm taking you through each one of these things is these are our core coverage tenets and focuses. So we want to cover more brands that are getting into finance, and that's what we call embedded finance. Embedded finance is taking financial services out of the four walls of a bank and embedding it within a software company, embedding it within a retail company, embedding it into something that hasn't been created yet, right? So financial services it's one of our trends that we put our finger on very early. That you know, I think it was Dove Marmor who used to be at Green Dot. He always said people want to bank with the brands that they love, and that actually is happening. Like it doesn't have to be a financial brand; it might be your accounting software. So that's November, and then December will be trends for 2022. We tend to use December to look forward, speaking to a lot of the senior thought leaders in the space, and kind of projecting what the next year has in store for it. And those are fun pieces. They're typically big pieces. We quote a lot of different people in that. We have a few different segments there, so would love to hear you guys and the clients you represent or the companies you work for to hear your opinions on some of these biggest trends next year. Aaron, it looked like you wanted to pipe in. Did you have something?
No, I was just looking at the time. I want to make, but one thing I want to say is, by all means, I would love for people to like kind of explore, and we'll talk a little bit more about like how you can get involved in these conferences, whether it's coming to the conferences. They're gonna be in New York, and of course, like Zach said, like we're interested in these themes. Doesn't mean that we're only interested in that. So if as we discuss later on how to engage with us, from maybe a potential earned opportunity, like have these in mind, but also like others as well. We'd love to see you at these conferences. I think this is a great place for you to be, and of course sponsorships, like being in front of, the some of the biggest and interesting mid-tier, top-tier banks, and financial institutions in the industry, and they're going to be here. So I would love for you, whoever's out there interested in like having a controlled way of projecting yourself out to this audience, to speak with us, because there's a lot that we could do.
That's great. And I realized in my rush to get YouTube live going, Aaron and I didn't even introduce ourselves. I'm Zach Miller, editor in chief, and Aaron is CEO of Tearsheet. And it's a good point now to talk about that distinction because I handle organic opportunities and I run our editorial team, our journalistic team, and Aaron runs our content studio and our relationships with our partners. And so we do have the Chinese wall between the two of us. And so, but I think we're coming together here to talk to you to say like, even though there's no way really to game an organic opportunity, there's no way to force that, but we really see the content on Tearsheet, both paid and earned, as really core content. And there have been times where Visa in particular has run quite a few bylines with Tearsheet. Some of those articles that Tearsheet that Visa submitted to us were our best performing articles that month, and I think that just speaks to the fact that like the content and our partners who work with us create content at the same level that we do and vice versa. And so there's an ongoing conversation. You were looking at the time. I think that was a gentle way of saying, let's move.
No, I was just looking at the time, but
Okay.
it's great. I could listen to you all day.
Oh, thanks, man. So let's talk about our sponsorship series. Let me first maybe talk about the series themselves, and Aaron, I'll turn it over to you to talk about how people can get involved. Two of these out of the three are series that we've run. We're sort of testing them, getting feedback on them. It's something we want to grow and invest in. So A Day in the Life is our series, as I mentioned. We're actually going to be turning this into a podcast. A couple of our reporters are going to be working on that, where it's a human interest story. It's like people in fintech who have interesting jobs. Maybe they work for an interesting company. Maybe they have an interesting background of how they got into the space. And we want to tell those stories, and we want to do it in a real way that gives a look, really kind of a ringside view into what makes these people tick, and what can you take away from that. I think that's the most important part of human interest stories, is how we reflect and see ourselves in some of those stories. So there's the day in the life, and then there's Deep Dive, which these are subscriber only. Our Outlier, we do have a paid subscription product called Outlier. Deep Dives are created by our journalist team that looks at some of the seminal companies in the industry, particularly on the fintech side. So the Affirms, the Shopifys that are getting into finance. And we do deep dives, into their product sets, into their revenue splits, into some of their strategic acquisitions, into their executives, who are the decision makers there. These are really important. I think if you're either new to the industry or looking to get deeper into it, that's an important one. And then there's one that Aaron and I have been working on maybe for a year. It's called Tech Stack Teardown, which for us is a way. kind of like how I built this, but for finance. It's going to again probably a seminal company in the industry, and looking through it, looking under the hood, and saying, well, how, what software did you use to build to use your core banking software? What CRM did you use? How are you interacting with your customers? What are you using for marketing automation? Like we want to get a feel for like what how these companies built themselves, and give and again, I think that provides a really interesting look into the stories that we love to tell. So, Aaron, do you want to talk about these from a sponsorship perspective?
Absolutely. And so I think that they're very popular, like a day in the life and deep dive, like we've gotten good feedback on them. They're important, right? And we would love the opportunity to open this up to a much wider audience. Like right now, these are they haven't yet been sponsored, and we're exploring the opportunity to sponsor this and to give it to a larger audience. If they're sponsored, we can like distribute it to our larger audience, and then give you the opportunity as a sponsor to like, maybe we can like look at some of your customers and feature or feature you. Like we wouldn't want it to be, let's say, in a day in the life, every single one of the sponsored day in the life would only be your customers. Like, but still, your name would be on it, and then every few articles within that series could hopefully have a little bit more of content around the sponsoring company. Same thing for the tech stack teardown. We'd love to embed some of the customers within that as well. So we're very, by the way, we're very, very careful about, like, if something's sponsored, it says it, and we don't want to like mislead our audience in any way. Like, we've worked very, very hard to be considered this objective voice within the industry. So and Zach alluded to that a little bit before, that there's this real a separation between church and state, with Zach being the absolute altar of the church, and me being I don't know if I'm the state, but I'm definitely focusing more on the economics of it. Maybe I'm the finance minister, and but just because you come to, and I tell this to all of our sponsors and customers, like, please, don't. We're not going to penalize you for being a sponsor by, you have to pay to play. There's no pay to play with us. Go to Zach as if there's no sponsorship opportunities that exist, and come to me as if you might not be covered by the editorial team. And when I say Zach, I don't actually mean Zach, because the team is much larger than just Zach. Zach's our founder. The founder of the company, but we have this incredible team of, we like to say, like, there's going to be some Pulitzer Prize winners on our team someday. Really, they're on that level, right? And so there's a lot of great editorial, journalists that are able to cover you and run after those opportunities. And Zach will talk more about that. But if you want to have that controlled ability to like really reach this audience, we're happy to speak with you to give you those opportunities. And I, by the way, started off in PR Newswire. That was my first gig, and so, like, I really truly believe that what the work that you do is hard, and it's so critically important. And those earned opportunities are so important, so keep on going after them. And just like when you engage with us, and Zach will talk about this more, engage with us in a way that, like, it's most likely to get that engagement. But you have less control over that ability. With us, with me and my team, we're able to like work with you to develop that.
I think that's a good point, and I can say, and we'll get more into this near the end as we make it through. For the most part, as I mentioned, our perspective is from the FI, the financial institution. So if you represent or work for a vendor, we don't write a lot about vendors with a focus on the vendors,
like a standalone.
As a standalone sort of perspective on the vendors. The vendor did this deal, the vendor expanded to here. There are a few vendors that we do cover occasionally like that. If we do cover a vendor, it's typically in the relationship to the FI that they're working with. So it's like, if a vendor comes to me pitching, and we'll talk about this at the end, a new product or a new deal that they made with an FI, I want to speak to the FI. It'll be important for our journalistic team to talk to the FI and get their perspective on the challenges and what the FI was solving for, not really focused on the vendor. And then we mentioned the vendor as sort of an enabler, as it may be an important part of that story, and we'll mention it, but the story won't be focused on the vendor. I think that's just an important in terms of our perspective. Programs. I think I'll start with just a few words about this, and then I'll turn it over to Aaron. But what's amazing here, what you'll see here, these are our programs. So this is a way to work with Tearsheet on a paid basis. But all of these mimic and complement the same things we're doing on the editorial side. So there are opportunities to build custom podcasts with us and white papers, but we're also producing those on the editorial side, on the journalistic side as well. So these things sit and reside within, or they're nested within one another. We're going to give the same attention that we give to an organic podcast to a sponsored podcast, and that shows. And so, as a reader, if you're in our audience, whether it came through a sponsorship or it came through something organic that we produced, we want it to be the same quality and the same sort of perspective on everything. And so we have our sponsored content, which is stuff that is sponsorable. We're creating these products and you're able to put your brand on it. We have cyclical content. And again, Aaron will talk more about this, but these are the things that we produce throughout the year. They come and go. They're opportunities that have start dates and end dates. And then there's custom content, which we do through our studio. We're continuing to invest in our content studio, Tearsheet Studios, where we can produce custom content. And that's produced with our team in conjunction with our clients. So Aaron?
Yeah, sure. So when I'm looking at that sponsored content, like Zach's saying, like we already have, we started our business on our podcast. That was really like the origin story includes that, and among the
we have what over a million subscribers of podcast.
Right, yeah. Over a million, 700,000 on SoundCloud, the same on iTunes, and I wouldn't say though. I don't think there's probably like 1.5 million people or aliens in the universe that could possibly be interested in the content that we produce. I think that has more to do with the longevity that we've been around for so long. And it's kind of like a YouTube channel where, you subscribe and you never unsubscribe. But we do have around 10,000 daily listens. And, the average podcast gets a few thousand listens in the first week or two alone. And then it's constantly being, if you haven't been able to catch it right now, you go later on. Like probably 10,000, 8,000, 11,000 on an average day. And again, like that, those podcasts, so many of them are organic opportunities that, we're pitched a lot of times by PR firms or the companies themselves to the editorial team, and we schedule those. And some of them are sponsors, right? And we have like Tearsheet Studios works really hard to develop those. And, it says that it's sponsored, but like the look and the feel really feels very much like everything we do. Newsletters, they go out, right? Like every day we have a daily newsletter for our Outlier subscribers. We have a weekly, now it's becoming a bi-weekly, and there's an opportunity to sponsor those with advertisements. Like one, I want to thank, some of the companies like PNC is sponsoring, FinTech Meetup did a really successful campaign last year for their inaugural, meetup, and they're going to be, they just signed up for, what?
Yeah, last quarter.
Yeah, last quarter, and they just signed up for now through March so that they can do it for their next event. Bylines are like kind of the paid equivalent of articles. So if you get an organic coverage in an article, well, you can have a paid opportunity by like working with us, and either like we'll create that content for you. We can actually go and write it for you, and it's like a custom byline or a custom white paper, or you can come with your own content, and we'll advise you on the best way to do it, and you can run it with us. And again, it says sponsored on it, but like a lot of times, like Zach said, some of the bylines and white papers get like more eyeballs than even sometimes content that's or as much. People come for our content, right? But like they also come for seeing what others in the industry are writing about. As far as like cyclical events content goes, when I say cyclical, I mean like so there's an anchor event like a choir conference, and leading up to the choir conference, we start talking more and more from a content side about customer acquisition. And then about a month or two before a choir, we launched the choir awards that celebrates all of the diversity and the excellence in marketing and customer acquisition. And then we announced the finalists right before the event, and then we announced we have like the mini Academy Awards, the Tearsheet Awards. At the event, at the end of the event, where we call up the winners, and they come down the red carpet, and then afterwards we publish a guide that kind of like distills all of that incredible content that we've generated during the cycle into this guide. And all that is sponsorable, right? We have sponsors at events, awards, and guides with custom content, whether it's research or buyer's guides, like, Fiserv just, we just published a buyer's guide to data aggregation sponsored by Fiserv. Thank you very much, Fiserv, if you're there. We had the guide to banking as a service sponsored by Strands, a European company that's recently started selling in the US. And then case studies, these are awesome. They're paid for. You do a podcast with one of our, with an interviewer, it could be Zach or someone else on our team. And then we create this beautifully rich, audio as well as a visual case study. And then we do interesting, fun things like, the WTF series to explore arcane, a little bit more complex subjects, but in a lighter kind of way, or games. We did one with MX, and so and I won't get into each and every one, the details of each and every one of these things, but there's a lot, right? We have a lot of ideas, and there's a lot more than this that we can talk about. And we're happy also if you come to us with your ideas, right? You say, listen, I saw this somewhere else, or I had this crazy idea and I'd really have to do it. Well, we like crazy ideas, and we'll just figure out how to make it work, and let's work on it together.
Awesome. I love the way you say that. And I love your energy about that, Aaron. Aaron's so passionate about everything he does. So I think now it's time to, because events serve as fulcrums, as focal points of our content, both organic and sponsored, and that cyclical content that Aaron was talking about. We can talk here about the events we have coming up the rest of this year. We've already done 2 events this year. We'll be doing another 3, as I mentioned. September 14th will be Convergence. As I mentioned, this is actually the first of its kind. I don't know of another company that has done this, but it's actually a bespoke conference. It's a Tearsheet conference, but we sat with Publicis Sapient, who's been a great partner of ours, heard their challenges, heard their opportunities, how they were looking to build their brand, how they're looking to build their thought leadership, in the great work that they do across many of the major banks in the U.S. and internationally. And we came together we converged on convergence as the topic. And so this is actually, this will be the first time we've done that. It's in New York. It will be an in-person event, a one-day event. And what a great opportunity to talk about one of the major trends within financial services. Next conference, October 7th and 8th, is the Challengers Conference. I mentioned this in passing before. This is a seminal conference for us. It's really about, we call it Challengers, but it's really about digital banking in general. So you'll hear from some of the top traditional banks, the traditional FIs, and you'll hear from some of the top upstarts in the space as well. And so the idea is to get everybody in a room together talking about these challenges and the opportunities within the space. And there's magic that happens when we get together. Our events are different than most other events you've been accustomed to. Tearsheet events, we have very few panels. Over the pandemic, and we shifted to online, we ended up doing a panel with every one of our conferences because it worked well in that medium. But in person, it's going to feel like a TED Talk. It's going to feel like a financial services TED Talk. And as mundane as that might sound, it's actually really fun. And so our speakers get up there. They get 25 minutes alone on the stage themselves. They're allowed 5 to 8 slides, and they're just presenting and talking about the ideas that they're passionate about. And so it moves very quickly. We do Q&A, and it feels like an intimate conference. Our conferences are also different from some of the other ones out there. Is that we're not actually looking to build conferences that are 11, 12,000 people big, like a Money 2020. We're targeting between 100 and 200 people. That's a good conference for us. We want to make sure it's not all vendors, that the people who sit in the seats are the buyers, actually, that they're the people who are going to make those buying decisions, so that if you do decide to sponsor the conference, you're going to have access to a room of people that are really engaged. It's not sellers selling to sellers like some other conferences out there. And I think that's important. So even from a programming point of view on the stage, we're going to make sure it's very few vendors speaking. It's the vendors who are speaking are typically paid slots, but they don't feel like paid. The events don't feel like a paid for event. Our programming team, our editorial team takes full control over who speaks. And so even our keynotes are not typically the sponsors. They're organic opportunities. Last up is our embedded conference. I mentioned this as well in my description of the sort of our content set. This will be the third time that we've done embedded. It's the one actually that's closest to my heart because it's the first conference that I led from soup to nuts. It'll be November 11th and 12th in New York City. And this is all about what I said, like the where financial services is headed. These we really the idea of, and I think this will become our flagship conference if it isn't already. This is where we get banks. These are mostly partner banks that are working with fintechs, so they're providing licenses and sort of account infrastructure. There's the embedded layer, which is the banking as a service layer. These are technology companies, and then they're the brands, right? So it could be Apple, it could be Uber. These are the biggest brands in the world. Typically financial technology companies, but increasingly it just to be everybody. We want to get them all in a room together to talk about how does this thing look, going forward. Like to me, this is the future of finance. I think where everything is headed, more disruptive than crypto. This is where this is the new bank industry in my mind. And so embedded is our conference at the end of the year. Aaron, you have something to add to that, or?
No, I'm excited to see that, and this is great. Like we had such a great year this year with Acquire and Data Day.
We did, and we made a second slide here just to show you what else is coming. So that last slide was through the rest of 2021. 2022, we're going to be doing the same events again, except in the beginning of the year, which I had left out in the previous slide, we have our Acquire conference, which, as Aaron described, is about marketing and customer acquisition, customer service, everything that touches consumers. We did our inaugural one this year of Acquire, and it was a fantastic conference. Some of the best financial brands in the world talking about, again, how they make the sausage, what kind of campaigns are they running, who they're targeting, what channels are working for them. My background is in marketing and financial services, so I love this conference. And then Data Day, which is our commitment to the infrastructure within financial services. This is about the financial ecosystems that are being built around the largest financial institutions that are sharing their data, and fintech companies that are consuming that data, all with the view that consumers will be able to access their own data freely and openly, and in doing that, just get the financial services that they deserve. And so Day to Day has consistently been a great conference in the data aggregation space and data sharing space. And so we're doing that one again next year as well. So
By the way,
without,
like
yeah,
a lot, like even though these are very niche, like we intentionally try not to have broad like everything conferences. Like we're not Money 2020, and they're fantastic for what they do. We're very niche and focused. That being said, there's a lot of there's a huge ecosystem around each of these that aren't just the data ag people or just just the customer acquisition people. There's so much that goes into so for example, Acquire. If you're a technology partner that helps facilitate customer acquisition for banks, this is important. Whether it could be a credit check, that's part of the customer acquisition process, right? So as you think about whether or not you should attend or you should sponsor these, try to kind of take a step back and say, wait a minute, is this a segment that we're really that is really important to us? And if it's not, for example, I was looking. We spoke to Publicis Sapient, and by the way, they're going to be a sponsor. And thank you, Publicis Sapient, for sponsoring Embedded Conference this coming year as well. And we're looking for other sponsors. There's room for a few more sponsors for each of these. And they said, this is great, but we really whereas these conferences are built around the theme that we as sponsors need to find how we fit into that, and we fit pretty well with Embedded. We would really love to do a conference around something that's really we're passionate about, and we really focus on a lot, about convergence. And so creating that convergence conference was us, building a conference around the themes of a sponsor, right? It's not about the sponsor, right? It's kind of I always say, it's like you're going to show up, right? You'll do a little work, but it's kind of like we're going to throw the party, we're going to throw the wedding for you. You just have to tell us what color flowers, tell us what's on the menu a little bit, and we'll go and we'll do it, and we'll find it, and we'll bring in the band, and you'll show up to your own wedding. So and hopefully if you're interested in that, we have a lot of experience putting on these conferences, and we'd love to do it for you as well.
awesome. Awards programs. Aaron mentioned this before around our conferences. we have awards programs. So this is not only a way, this is more content for us. It's not only the fact that we're having speakers come to our conferences, not only that we're leading up to this with organic content, but we're also having awards programs who are identifying and celebrating some of the top players in the space. And these are fun. These are a way to differentiate yourself from your competitors, particularly in more commoditized type services and products. And it's a way to just celebrate you. And so it was also Aaron's brainchild in the sense that he just said, well, why don't, just like in real life, we did this online. Why don't we bring the finalists of the awards on screen and have them accept their awards and build up some creative tension around it. And it was great. And like, you know, if CEOs and SVPs and managing directors were speaking from the stage for the awards programs, a lot of times we had the product manager that came out with a particular product or feature, and it was a way to celebrate everybody involved. And it just made, companies are very proud that they win these awards. They include it in their press releases. They include it in their signature line within in their emails. And so we have some of the best names here who have applied for awards and won them. Guides, Aaron, you want to take this one?
Sure. So I think I spoke about it a little bit before. We have like different types of buyer's guides. We also have guides that come out after the like part of the cyclical content, like after the conference. And so these are sponsorable. There's if it's a buyer's guide, we'll try to find all of the banking as a service, the most important banking as a service companies out there, and do a lot of deep research. These are the kinds of this is the kind of information that buyers are really interested in. So like if you're so first of all, if you feel that that your company belongs in a guide, so definitely by all means reach out to us. We're usually very good at covering everyone or most of the companies that are we feel important in this industry. But of course, it's always good to engage with us with the editorial team to give it to us. And also, this is definitely an opportunity for you to sponsor and to get in front of the people that are downloading this. And each of these guys are downloaded by literally hundreds and hundreds of decision makers. Some of them, and it's all year round. So like the banking as a service buyer's guide, from a year and a half ago was downloaded like almost 1,000 times, over the course of the year and a half. And now we have the new one, which has been downloaded hundreds of times, and I'm sure it'll get even more than that. So that's this.
Just rounding out custom content. This is our studio, and this is the opportunity where we actually have an in-house studio to be able to help create any type of custom content. It could be buyer's guides, it could be case studies, surveys, and reports. We have an executive panel of our readers, influential people who have opted in to do research with. We've got these WTF guides, which are around, as Aaron said, some important topics like keywords almost in your industry. If you want to own those, we can do, WTF is decentralized finance. And we go and we explain that, to make it very easy and understandable. You can own those words. And we have white papers. So if you have a topic or something that you want to use to differentiate yourself or to explain a new product, we not only create that for you, but we obviously have distribution as well to our audience.
Great. I have nothing to add to that.
So takeaways, we're almost at the end of the hour. We don't want to keep you any longer. So how to pitch us, right? So my email is available, zach@tearsheet.co. I'm sure you have it anyway if you're coming to this webinar. And the idea is, again, so all of our pitches are typically FI focused. So even if you represent a vendor, if you come to me and say, listen, it's a story about a vendor, but they just did a deal with the largest bank in the US. And again, most of our coverage is 95% of our coverage is focused on the US. So typically we're going to be weighted towards that. But we've got a bank, the top 10 bank just deployed our technology. I can get you on the phone with our head of sales, but also I'll get you with the head of marketing at the bank. Those types of stories resonate very well with me. If to take a step forward and say, we're bringing in the FI for you, helping me to craft the story, because I'm interested in the FI's perspective, not necessarily the vendors so much. So if you can position it that way, it makes it easier for me to say yes, and it positions the story more like a Tearsheet story. Other things we're looking for, something different. We like something unique. So our stories are telling narratives about how things happen. how deals were made. We don't want the press release. We really want something that goes a step beyond that, that helps to connect the dots for our readers, put this into context for us, and put this into context for our readers. Goes a step beyond maybe what was written in the press by firms that are not focused on fintech the way we are. And there's opportunities to be creative. Again, because we're focused on culture, we're focused on anything that touches and is marketing campaigns that are kind of edgy and stuff like that. We want to hear about that. So just right before this webinar started, Goldman Sachs just pinged me with a new campaign that they're doing, and it has to do with the celebrity. And if you can help to connect the dots for that, provide some interesting visuals, give us a perspective on a story that hasn't been covered this way elsewhere, we're more likely to do that. That said, and Aaron knows my email volume. I probably get between 100 and 200 pitches a day. I kid you not. And so the likelihood of me getting to, unfortunately, is low. And I'm not saying that from an egoistic point of view. I'm just saying I'm inundated. We have other reporters who, if you're following Tearsheet, you know that they write, and each one has a different beat. So you may be more successful reaching out to them directly, even though I'm the editor. I would definitely encourage you to do that. And, creating a way to make you stand out from the hundreds of other pitches that we get, I think is the best way to pitch us. Aaron, what about you?
I'll talk about me in a second, but there's one thing I want to add, which is I was recently reading, I was looking at some of the articles that we wrote. I've been speaking to a company that's in the same space as Marqeta. And so I was trying to, and they're interested in possibly being a sponsor of ours. So I just wanted to show them that there's, content related to, some of their competitors that we write about regularly. It turns out that we write about them as well. A lot of times it's not only we have a whole article just on you, right? But if you can think about well, what kind of executives can you make available to the editorial team if there's of topics of particular areas of expertise. So when they are writing a very in-depth article, which they often are, where they're having multiple sources, you might be a good source for that, and if you're an FI, but also if you're a vendor, right? So vendors kind of look at stories from a very different perspective. They're trying to solve a problem, or they're trying to, to give a particular type of technology that helps empower the bank. So, and if we're trying to do that, that's an opportunity for you to, speak with us. As far as paid opportunities go, definitely I see there's sponsorable opportunities. So, obviously you can, all the things that we spoke about, you can reach out to me. It could be sales@tearsheet.co. You can reach out to me at Aaron@tearsheet.co. And we have a sales team that's available to work with you. I don't even think of it as a sales team. We're more like almost like a sponsor consultants. There's no hard pitch, right? What I want to make sure is that there's a good match. We don't take everybody that approaches us just because they have money to give to us. We'd rather not take the money if we don't feel that it would bring you value. And once we do take you on, we really work really hard to make sure that you get as much value as you can. So we have a customer relations team that we've invested heavily in, and it could be your content. So you can come to us with sponsored bylines that you wrote or white papers, and we'll find ways of promoting that. You've worked so hard on all these amazing assets, and a lot of times they just sit and reside, on a company, on a company white paper page. And so this is an opportunity to really distribute it, or to get in front of Zach and some of the other people that we have doing incredible work on podcasts or in front of audiences live now, and also, broadcast, at some of our conferences. We would love to work with you. And by doing so, you're not only, supporting us, but you're also really going to, get in front of I think pretty much the most influential audience in this industry, the real decision makers, the top level C-level executives that are the ones that write the checks, but also, the VPs and senior directors that are the ones that are the key influencers that are hey, this is what I really, this is what we really need. So, we look forward to hearing from you. We're really thankful that you took the time out of your busy schedule or your vacation to come, and so on, behalf of me and the whole operations and sales team, I thank you. And, And I just want to give it to Zach to end off. But it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you all for taking some time out of your day to join us. I would say that the best way to get to know Tearsheet is just exactly what you're doing today. Come to a webinar, come to a conference. If you're considering working with us or sponsoring us, or even if you want to, get your clients in front of us, start connecting with us in those channels. I think that's the best way to get to know us, and you get a feel for the sensitivity we have to quality and to honesty, and what you see is what you get here with Aaron and I, and the rest of our team as well. And so we have some great content. We'll continue to produce great content, and we're looking forward to hearing from you guys in the future. So thank you. And with that, we'll conclude our session. Thanks, guys.